The Viking Age, a time of sails on the horizon, swords in the soil, and kings rising and falling like waves crashing on a northern shore. It began in the late 8th century, and by the mid-11th century, the Norsemen had changed Britain forever. But who were the Vikings? The word Viking doesn't describe a people, so much as an activity. It meant to go raiding. These seafaring warriors came from the cold coasts of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. At home, they lived in small, clan-based societies, practicing farming, fishing, and shipbuilding. Their religion was Norse paganism, with gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya. They believed in fate, glory in battle, and dying with a sword in hand to reach Valhalla. Their secret weapon was the longship, sleek, fast, and able to navigate both deep seas and shallow rivers. These ships gave Vikings unmatched mobility across Europe. And one day, they turned their gaze toward Britain. To understand why the Vikings came, we have to go back. The Romans withdrew from Britain around 410 AD. Without Roman rule, Britain splintered into warring kingdoms. The native Britons were soon overrun by Germanic tribes, the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, who carved out their own realms. This gave rise to what's known as the Heptarchy, 7 Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, including Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, and Wessex. These states often fought each other, and Britain remained politically fractured. It was into this divided land that the Vikings arrived. In 793 AD, they struck. The target was Lindisfarne, a peaceful monastery on an island off the northeast coast of England. The attack shocked all of Christian Europe. Lindisfarne had been seen as sacred and untouchable, but the Vikings cared little for holy ground. They looted, killed, and left blood on the altar. More raids followed, on coastal monasteries and towns, especially those in Northumbria and East Anglia, and with every season, they returned. By the 850s, something changed. The Vikings were no longer just raiders. They began staying for the winter, building camps, and looking to conquer. Around this time, legend speaks of Ragnar Lothbrok, a mythical Norse hero, said to have raided both Francia and Britain. According to the sagas, he was captured by King Ella of Northumbria and thrown into a pit of snakes, and though we can't confirm if Ragnar lived or died, what followed was all too real. In 865 AD, the great Heathen army landed in East Anglia. It was a massive force, led by Ivar the Boneless, said to be one of Ragnar's sons, along with other Norse chieftains like Halfdan and Ubba. They weren't just raiders, they were invaders. Northumbria fell. King Alla was killed, possibly in the gruesome execution known as the Blood Eagle. Mercia submitted, East Anglia was taken. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms were falling, one by one. Only Wessex remained. It was here that Alfred the Great rose. At first, Alfred suffered defeat. The Vikings overran much of the land, but in 878, he rallied his forces and won a decisive victory at the Battle of Edington. There, the Viking leader Guthrum was forced to accept baptism and peace. A treaty was signed. Dividing England, the Vikings ruled the Danelaw, a large swathe of territory in the north and east, where Norse customs, laws, and language took root. Places like York, or Jorvik, became Viking power centers. But peace was always temporary. Over the next century, Viking influence continued. There were new waves of Norse settlers from Denmark and Norway, mixing with the Anglo-Saxon population. But the kings of Wessex slowly reclaimed land. Alfred's successors, Edward the Elder, Athelstan, and Edgar the Peaceful, began pushing back the boundaries of the Danelaw, uniting England into a single kingdom. Still, the Viking threat never truly went away, and by the late 10th century, it returned with devastating force. Enter Aethelred the Unready. His nickname doesn't mean he was unprepared, but rather ill-advised, from the Old English word unrad. His reign was marked by indecision, poor counsel, and repeated Viking invasions. In 991, the Danes won at the Battle of Maldon, and Aethelred began paying them to leave, massive sums known as Danegeld, but it didn't work. In 1002, Aethelred ordered the St. Brice's Day massacre, killing Danes living in England. Among the dead may have been the sister of Sweyn Forkbeard, King of Denmark. Sweyn retaliated. He launched a full-scale invasion, and by 1013 he had conquered England. Sweyn's son, Cnut the Great, picked up the torch. After years of bloody warfare, Cnut defeated Aethelred's son, Edmund Ironside, at the Battle of Assendon in 1016. Edmund died shortly after, and Cnut became king of all England. Cnut ruled wisely. He was Christian, respected English customs, and brought stability. He also ruled Denmark and Norway, creating a North Sea empire, one of the largest kingdoms in Europe at the time. But it didn't last. After Cnut's death in 1035, his sons, Harold Harefoot and Harthacnut, fought for control. Harold ruled briefly, but after his death, Harthacnut took over. And when he died childless in 1042, the Viking line in England came to an end. The throne passed to Edward the Confessor, the son of Aethelred the Unready, returning the crown to the House of Wessex. Edward had no heir, and standing behind him was a powerful nobleman, Harold Godwinson. Harold was Earl of Wessex, the kingdom's most powerful magnate. Upon Edward's death in January 1066, Harold seized the throne, but others had claims too. That same year, Harald Hardrada, king of Norway, invaded from the north, backed by Harold's own brother Tostig. The Vikings won at Fulford near York, but were met by Harold Godwinson's army at Stamford Bridge. There the Viking dream died. Hardrada was slain, and Tostig too. It was the end of the Viking Age. But Harold's army was exhausted, and in the south, a new invader had landed, William, Duke of Normandy, claiming a promise to the throne. The two armies met at the Battle of Hastings, and on that bloody field, Harold was killed. William became king. The Normans, themselves descendants of Vikings, now ruled England. But this time, it was different. No longer were they raiders or warbands. They were feudal conquerors with castles, bureaucracy, and a plan. So ended the Viking Age in Britain. Nearly 3 centuries of raids, invasions, kingdoms rising and falling. They came with fire and steel, but also trade, language, and culture. Their legacy endures in place names, in bloodlines, and in the very foundations of English identity. From Lindisfarne to Hastings, it was an age of chaos and transformation. And though the Viking sails vanished from the horizon, their echoes remain.